A thin fog hangs above the Atlantic like a shroud, and the transport ship groans under the weight of hundreds of German prisoners pressed shoulder to shoulder on the open deck. Cold wind slices through their threadbare uniforms, carrying flecks of seawater that sting like needles. The men say nothing at first. They only stare into the dark horizon where no land exists yet, only the soft, rhythmic thud of the ship's engines. Heartbeat of an uncertain future. 21-year-old Franz Vogel clutches the railing so tightly his knuckles pale to ghost white. His stomach twists with every rise and drop of the ship. He whispers to himself, America, Feindesland, enemy land. The word feels too large, too distant, too impossible. He remembers the stories the officers told. You will be beaten, you will be starved, you will be made to work until your bones crack. Americans are savages, especially the black ones, and the Jews, and the Southerners, and the gangsters in New York. Every man on this ship carries a version of that fear. Behind France, a soft humming rises, a lullaby of all things. Private Emil Brenner sings under his breath, voice trembling with homesickness. The tune is one the mothers in Württemberg used to sing, a melody about warm bread and winter hearths. But Emil's voice shakes, cracks, and dies into silence. A guard passes by, an American with a cigarette pinched between his lips, smoke curling around his face. His movements are relaxed, almost lazy. He taps ash over the railing, nods once at the prisoners, and continues on. No shouting, no striking, no humiliation, just a man on his night patrol. This unsettles the Germans more than abuse would have. Franz leans close to Emil and murmurs, why aren't they different? Emil shrugs, maybe they wait until we arrive. A cluster of prisoners huddle near the stern, whispering frantically under the red ghost light that barely illuminates the deck. They argue about what America will be like, some imagining concrete prisons, others picturing monstrous factories where prisoners are fed scraps and turned into labor machines. One insists the Americans will parade them through the streets, jeered at by civilians. Another claims they will be sent to a desert where the sun peels skin from bone. Dread grows like mold in the damp corners of their minds. The ship rolls, moaning like a wounded beast. A wave crashes against the hull, sending a fine spray across the deck. Franz wipes the brine from his eyes and tastes the bitterness between his teeth. Beside him, Emil pulls out something small, something hidden carefully in his coat. A button, a simple black button from his father's old coat. He rubs it like a talisman. A diary page flaps beside a lantern. A young soldier, barely 18, writes quietly, if this ship sinks, no one at home will ever know if I was brave. The sentence trails into a messy scrawl as the boy steadies himself against the rocking. Hours pass in the dark until at last a shout erupts from the bow. Lights, I see lights. A surge of prisoners rush forward, breath steaming in the icy air. At first, Franz thinks it's a hallucination, a trick of exhaustion. But then he sees it clearly, not the dim glow of a harbor at war, not the flickering ruins of bombed-out Europe, but a string of lights, clear, steady, confident, stretched along a coast that seems impossibly whole. America, the land itself doesn't look threatening, it looks peaceful, too peaceful, houses with intact roofs, streets that appear unscarred, no smoke, no ruins, no searchlights slicing the sky for enemy bombers. Just a quiet coastline glowing like a promise, and for the first time, fear shifts into something sharper, confusion. This is not the land they were warned about. Franz feels his heart skitter like a trapped bird. The men murmur prayers, curses, questions. Tears glint in the corner of one soldier's eye. The ship's horn bellows into the night, low and mournful. The lights of America grow brighter, larger, more undeniable with each passing minute. Emil whispers, voice cracking, they lied. They lied to us, Franz. Franz doesn't answer. He can't. He is staring at the shoreline, at the silent houses with their warm glowing windows, and thinking of the city he left behind. Munich, broken and blackened, smoke forever leaking from its wounds. He thinks of his mother, standing in line for bread that never arrives, and he wonders with a sudden, terrifying clarity, what else did they lie about? What else remains unknown? The ship drifts closer. The lights sharpen, and the first shock begins. Quiet, steady, impossible to escape. America does not look like an enemy. It looks like a world untouched by war. A world they were never meant to imagine. Dawn breaks over the harbor like a soft golden bruise, light spreading gently across the water, as if even the sun takes care not to startle the newly arrived prisoners. France stands at the rail, breath shallow, watching gulls circle overhead. Their cries sound strangely cheerful, as if mocking the dread that has clung to the men through the entire crossing. The ship eases toward the dock with a deep, shuddering sigh, ropes slapping the wooden posts. The harbor workers, broad-shouldered Americans in clean overalls, move with unhurried coordination, no rifles slung over their backs, no snarling orders, just a few gestures, a shouted "bring it" in slow, and the thump of boots on planks. France feels tension ripple through the prisoners like static. He hears whispered warnings. Here it begins. They will drag us out. They will make us kneel. Emil swallows hard beside him. Stay close to me, he mutters. But nothing happens, no blows, no barking guards. Instead, a young American soldier steps onto the deck, clipboard in hand. He is tall, dark-skinned, his uniform neatly pressed. He clears his throat softly before speaking, almost politely. "All right, fellas, you'll be unloaded in groups of 20. Stay calm and everything goes smoothly." His tone is so casual it is unsettling. The Germans stare at him as though he has spoken a foreign language. A black man in uniform giving orders to white soldiers, German soldiers, a thing they had been told was impossible, unnatural, dangerous. France feels the world tilt a little. A sergeant passes out steps for disembarking. Another hands out water, not the cloudy metallic taste of rationed seawater, but cold, clear water in real cups, real glass. One prisoner refuses to drink, convinced it is a trick. Poison, perhaps. Another cries silently after the first sip, whispering, "I forgot what clean water tasted like." As France descends the gangplank, the sunlight warms his face. The dock smells of pine and engine oil, not the acrid burn of bombed-out cities. He blinks hard, adjusting to the brightness. America seems too bright, a country lit from within. He steps onto land that is smooth and solid and whole, and then comes the first great shock. A cluster of American Red Cross women wait near the truck smiling, not with triumph or cruelty, but with simple professional courtesy. Their hair tied in scarves, their uniforms crisp. One carries a tray of something impossible, coffee. Steam rises from the cups, carrying the scent of roasted beans and warmth and distant cafes in cities that no longer exist. The men freeze as the aroma wraps around them. France's knees nearly buckle. The last real coffee he tasted was 2 years ago, before rationing strangled the continent. One of the women approaches, smiling gently. "You may take one, it's all right." The Germans glance at each other, eyes wide, terrified of making the wrong move. The woman holds the tray steady. After a moment, an older soldier, thin, grey, trembling, reaches for a cup. His hand shakes violently, spilling a dark streak across his fingers. The woman simply says with soft compassion, "Careful, sir, it's hot." "Sir, sir," France watches the man's breath catch, a word so small, so harmless, yet so devastating. They had expected to be called swine, devils, murderers, to be beaten, punished, debased. Instead, they are addressed with respect. France takes a cup. The heat seeps into his palms. He lifts it slowly, cautiously, and sips. The flavor explodes across his tongue. Bitter, rich, impossibly fragrant. Tears sting his eyes without warning. He lowers the cup quickly, embarrassed, but no one laughs. Dozens of men are openly crying. A psychological wound begins to open inside him. Emil murmurs, voice barely audible, "They're treating us better than our own officers did." Beyond the dock, trucks wait, clean, well, maintained, engines humming evenly. Not cattle wagons, not filthy, overcrowded cars. real trucks with cushioned benches. As they board, one prisoner pauses, frowning at something on the seat. A blanket, soft, folded, provided. He stares at it as though it might bite him. The convoy pulls away from the harbor, rolling through small American towns that remain astonishingly untouched. France stares out the window, heart pounding. Children ride bicycles down wide streets. Women hang laundry in yards that glow with morning sunlight. A man in a hat tips his head politely as the trucks pass. There are no ruins, no hunger, no rubble, no fear. Emil wipes his eyes with the back of his wrist. God in heaven, it's like the war didn't happen here. France shakes his head slowly, not like home. In the distance, fields stretch endlessly, golden, thick, alive. Barns painted in bright colors stand proudly, untouched by firestorms. Cows graze lazily. A dog races along a fence, barking with the simple joy of being alive. The prisoners stare, stunned into silence. They whisper things like, "Is this a dream? Why didn't our leaders show us this? How could such a place exist while our cities starved?" The trucks turn onto a quiet road lined with tall oak trees. Their branches arch overhead like a cathedral roof. Sunlight filters through the leaves in shifting patterns. Franz closes his eyes and inhales. The air smells of earth and grass and life. Clean, unscarred life. The convoy slows at a large gate. Camp Swift, or Camp Hearn, or one of dozens like it. The sign swings gently in the breeze, not a fortress. Not a dungeon, just a place. A place that looks like it might hold people. Not animals, not slaves, not monsters. Franz grips the edge of his seat. The first shock was the lights. The second, the coffee. The third, this quiet, thriving land. But the deepest shock is still forming, silent and heavy, waiting to reveal itself. The realization that everything they believed about America is beginning to crumble. The first night in the camp smells of cut grass and wooden barracks warmed by the sun. Franz lies awake on a real mattress, thin but clean, listening to the unfamiliar quietude around him. No distant thud of bombs, no air aid sirens, no screaming. Only the soft chorus of crickets beyond the window screens and the low murmur of men whispering in disbelief. He turns his head and sees Emil in the bunk across from him, staring at the ceiling. "You awake too?" Franz whispers. Emil nods. "I keep waiting for something terrible to happen." Franz understands. It feels wrong to relax. Wrong to trust. Wrong to lie in a bed that doesn't stink of mold and fear. The blanket is rough but warm. The pillow smells faintly of detergent. A sharp, clean scent they can't associate with anything from home. He closes his eyes and forces himself to sleep. But America does not let the Germans rest so easily. The meal the next morning, the men file into the dining hall like condemned prisoners walking toward the gallows. Franz feels hollow, bracing for humiliation or cruelty. He expects a watery soup, a crust of stale bread if anything, but then he sees the trays, eggs, piled bright, yellow and steaming, bacon, sizzling, crisp, radiating a smell that makes his stomach clench painfully. Fresh bread, soft, warm, brushed with melted butter, milk, cold, white, more milk than he has seen in years. Oatmeal sweetened with sugar, real sugar. The prisoners freeze. They stand motionless, unable to move forward. "Go on," an American cook urges. "Plenty for everybody." Plenty. The word hits like a blow. Franz swallows hard. He steps forward. His hands tremble as he lifts the spoon. The eggs taste unreal, rich, creamy, soft. He closes his eyes and nearly sobs. Across the table, a grown man openly weeps as he eats. No one mocks him. No one can. Emil whispers, voice cracking, "I forgot food could taste like this." A young American server passes by with a pitcher. "More milk." Franz stares at him, stunned. The boy smiles, as though this is the most ordinary thing in the world. The cruelty of kindness slices deep, too. The newspapers later, in the recreation hall, the Americans set down newspapers. English language, ordinary, unfiltered. A guard waves a hand. "You can read these, nothing classified." The Germans glance at one another suspiciously, expecting propaganda, but something in the headlines snags Franz's breath. Detroit auto plants increase civilian production. Civilian. Production, factories operating for everyday life, not for weapons, not for bombs, not for desperation. The photographs show smiling workers on assembly lines, baseball players mid-swing, families at picnics, advertisements for refrigerators. Refrigerators? Emil picks up a paper, fingers shaking. France, look, they still have advertisements. They have enough that they can afford to choose what to buy. France feels the old certainties, those stitched into him by years of speeches, slogans, threats, beginning to fray. If America was suffering, where were the ruins, where were the ration lines, where was the misery that Germany's leaders insisted was universal? He sees none of it. He sees abundance. 3. Letters from home in the afternoon. The prisoners receive their first batch of intercepted letters from Germany. They gather in the yard, sunlight harsh on their faces. France sits on the grass, real grass, clutching the envelope as if it contains a living thing. He tears it open. My dear France, we stand in lines every morning for bread, but sometimes there is none left when we reach the front. His mother's handwriting is thin, unsteady. She writes of hunger, of the cold, of neighbors who died during the winter bombings. She writes of his sister Anna trading a shawl for a half-kilo of potatoes. She writes of fear, constant, gnawing fear. But do not worry about us, she adds. We hear the Americans are cruel. If you are alive, they will make you suffer. France stops reading. His breath comes in shallow bursts. Cruel. He looks around the yard at men playing football with an old leather ball, at others sunbathing, at the guard leaning against a fence post reading a magazine. What was he supposed to write back? Dear mother, the Americans feed us better than we fed ourselves. They treat us like humans. They call me sir. How could he explain such impossible truth? 4. The guilt that night after lights out, France lies awake again, staring into the darkness above him. Guilt sits heavy on his chest like a stone. Why should he eat well while his mother starves? Why should he sleep safely while his city burns? Why should he walk freely while his father lies buried under rubble? Emil whispers from the next bunk, voice soft and shattered. I feel wrong inside, France, as if enjoying anything here means I'm betraying home. France doesn't answer for a long time. Finally he murmurs, I think. That's the hardest part. The silence that follows is thick, suffocating. Because they both know the truth. Cruel treatment would have been easier. Cruelty would have matched the stories they carried. Cruelty would have been familiar. Cruelty would not have shattered everything they believed. But kindness digs deeper. Kindness exposes lies. Kindness forces them to question themselves. The greatest weapon turned out not to be force, but decency. And decency, France realizes, is a mirror, one that reflects not just the Americans, but everything Germany forbade them to see. By late summer, the camp has settled into a strange rhythm, a rhythm France still can't fully accept. Days shaped by routine, morning roll call, meals heavy with warmth and calories, work details in the nearby fields, evenings filled with chess games, guitar music, even laughter that feels borrowed from a world they no longer belong to. Yet beneath the surface, tension coils like barbed wire, not from the Americans, from within, because the more kindness the prisoners receive, the sharper the inner wound becomes. 1. The fracture within it begins quietly. A whispered argument between two men over breakfast. They want to break us with softness. One insists, stabbing at his eggs. They want us to forget who we are. Another murmurs, maybe we need to forget. At a corner table, a former officer snaps, we are soldiers of the Reich. We must not be corrupted. Corrupted, the word hangs in the air like a threat. France watches the debate spread across the room. Young recruits bowing their heads, older soldiers clinging to the last tatters of pride. Emil sits beside him, pushing his food around without eating. They're afraid. Emil says softly, of what? France asks. Emil's eyes shift toward the Americans behind the counter, handing out refills with easy smiles. Of the truth, too. The library one afternoon, the prisoners are led to a small wooden building on the far side of the camp. The library, a place they expect to be off limits, a place of secrets, of forbidden knowledge. A guard unlocks the door. You can borrow whatever you want, just return it. Inside, shelves overflow with books: Dickens, Twain, Jack London, Steinbeck. Worlds untouched by war, worlds where characters wrestle with human questions rather than political commands. France picks up The Grapes of Wrath. The paper smells of dust and age. The cover is soft from countless hands. He reads through the afternoon, losing himself in a story of hardship, of families struggling against hunger and displacement. But in a land of abundance, even hardship feels different. Cleaner, honest, without the shadow of tyranny pressing against every line. Emil sits across from him with a book of poems. Listen, he whispers and reads aloud. There is another sky, ever serene and fair. Franz closes his eyes. Another sky. The words feel like a secret whispered between the pages, a reminder that life can be more than survival. But when they leave the library, two older prisoners glare at them, disgust carving deep lines into their faces. You're letting this place change you. You should be ashamed. You forget we have a duty to Germany. Franz doesn't answer, but he feels the question burning through him. What duty remains when everything you were taught was a lie? 3. Letters from home. The shattering. A second batch of letters arrives in late August. This time, Franz opens the envelope slowly, bracing himself. His mother's handwriting trembles more than before. Franz, your sister Anna has fallen ill. Food is scarce. The winter will be difficult. We hear that prisoners in America live in terrible conditions. You must be suffering, but stay strong, my boy. Franz's hands begin to shake. He wants to scream. He wants to tear the letter apart. He wants to shout the truth into the sky. I am safe. I am fed. I have a bed. I am living better than you. Guilt claws up his throat until he can barely breathe. He folds the letter carefully, slides it into his pocket, and walks across the yard until he reaches the fence. He grips the wire, cool, rigid, humming faintly with the energy of separation, and bows his head. Beyond the fence, the American world sprawls effortlessly, trees rustling in the breeze, a farmhouse with white shutters, children laughing somewhere far off. He feels like a ghost haunting a land that isn't his. 4. The announcement. One crisp evening, the commandant gathers the prisoners in the yard. The fading sunlight paints the barracks in warm gold. The men stand shoulder to shoulder, breath held. The commandant clears his throat. Some of you will return to Germany in the coming months. The words fall like stones. Return to what? To ruins, to hunger, to the places where memories come crawling from the debris. A ripple of mixed emotion moves through the men. Joy, dread, longing, terror. Emil whispers, I don't know if I'm ready. Franz feels the same. America has not made him soft. No, it has made him aware of the world's vastness. Aware of what life could be when not dictated by fear. Aware of the monstrous gap between truth and propaganda, and awareness is irreversible. 5. The last night, the night before departure, Franz cannot sleep. He steps outside, barefoot, the ground cool beneath him. The sky is enormous, scattered with stars that look unlike the ones over Germany. Calmer, clearer, as though layered with possibility. Emil joins him, silent at first. Then he says quietly, what do we tell them when we go home? Franz exhales, breath trembling. Tell them the truth. Emil shakes his head. They won't believe us. Franz looks up at the stars. Maybe not. But truth changes a man even if no one else can see it. The wind rustles the grass around their ankles. A train horn echoes in the distance, soft, mournful, calling them toward a future they cannot predict. Franz whispers into the night, America didn't defeat me with weapons. He pauses, voice breaking. It defeated me with decency. 6. Resolution. The next morning, as the prisoners board the trucks that will carry them away from the camp, Franz pauses at the gate. He turns back for a final look at the oaks, the barracks, the guards drinking coffee from tin mugs. He touches the wooden post with his fingertips, not as a prisoner, as a man changed. When the truck rumbles to life, he whispers a single sentence under his breath, words he could never have imagined speaking months ago. If humanity exists anywhere, then war is a tragedy for all of us. The truck pulls away, the camp recedes behind him, but the transformation, quiet and profound, remains forever.